Hello, everybody, and welcome to Politics in a Movie with your hosts, Doug and Mike. I'm Doug.
And I'm Mike.
And this week's episode, the Electoral College and Good Will Hunting. As usual, Mike, I'd like to give a quick call out to Frenchie. Thank you, Frenchie, for all your help and assistance over these grueling episodes. So, Mike, I'm excited to jump into an up-and-coming popular segment we have, listener comments.
Oh, good. Great.
And let's ask Frenchie to start piping in some. I'll let you handle the first one.
Okay. From Lake House 12, your heads should be bigger.
Head should be. What popped in my head? Maybe our pictures on the web page or our album cover, our podcast cover.
Oh.
Although I could interpret it as you and I really should be more confident. So I don't know. Maybe we should be more cocky.
All right.
So either we have to be more cocky or we've got to enlarge those headshots of ours.
On the web page.
On the web page. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you for that comment.
Yeah. All right. Here's another from Johnson 11. What was the connection between term limits and the Matrix? Oh, yeah. So I guess in one of our previous episodes, we didn't make it clear. In general, Mike, we do have, albeit it may be a tenuous connection. There's usually a connection between our political topic and film. But the Matrix, I guess our connection there was that in the Matrix, Neo was a reoccurring savior for the humans. And, after he was done with his job, years later, there'd be another one. So he sort of had a term limit.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. Frenchie, hit us. I think we have one more to fit in this episode.
Okay. This is from Maureen. She says, I literally was smiling as I walked down the street as I was listening. Can't wait to listen to another one.
Oh, that's very nice. Oh, it's always good. Yeah. It's always good when Frenchie gives us the nice ones.
Thank you, Maureen.
Yes, thank you very much. And keep on listening. So hey, Mike, why don't we jump into your meaty topic?
Sure. The Electoral College, as you know, it's kind of unwieldy. It's a really big discussion, and it's been talked about a lot, especially in recent years with, certain elections that we've had, previous elections in the 2000s, starting with Al Gore, where the candidate with the most popular votes did not win. The Electoral College is set up in such a way that it hasn't happened often, but has happened with some frequency in recent years, where the candidate with the most popular vote, more people in the country voted for that candidate, yet the candidate did not win the Electoral College and thus did not win the election.
Yeah, that seems interesting. When did this, was the Electoral College, was that thing always around, or did it pop up at a certain year? Or
in 1787-ish, when we were moving from the original government that we had, the Articles of Confederation, to our current government, the founders met and they talked about a lot of things. And it's funny, if you're a fan of Hamilton, the musical, they talked about this. And there was an election in 1800, one of the earliest presidential elections, where the Electoral College tied, and the vote went into the House of Representatives, which is how it's written in this Constitution.
Right.
And the House of Representatives chose Thomas Jefferson over Aaron Burr. As you know from Hamilton, Aaron Burr had a duel with Hamilton and shot him.
Pardon me, are you Aaron Burr, sir?
So this is a contentious thing, and it got personal, I don't know if it was the Electoral College. I think it was a lot more than that, but this has been a discussion in our country for quite a long time. I think it originally, when the Constitutional Convention met, it was a compromise so that the larger states, the most populist states, would not dominate, and that it was sort of a bone thrown to the smaller states, rural states that had less population. And so rather than, if it was a strictly popular election, then yeah, sure, most of the population are in these large, more populous states.
Right.
And so they dominate over the smaller states. So that was sort of the thought behind that.
Yeah,
But
and I guess, when all that was going on, there wasn't an easy way for a lot of people to communicate.
that's true.
And when they were getting their news or
Yeah,
reading information, it was all very localized.
that's a good point. I mean, you can think of why can't we just do a direct popular election, because we all have the same information at this point. We all know the candidates. We
Right.
all know, I know we get our news from different sources now, but you would think, one person, one vote, that should be how it works.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. No one's at a disadvantage. Living in the Midwest now, they have their fingertips at all the information that everyone else has.
Yeah. I'm feeling in favor of a direct popular election.
Well, what would that take? Like, how would that ever come about?
It's tough. They'd have to, it would have to be a constitutional amendment, which of course requires, a vote in the Congress and then ratification by all of the states.
Yeah, those things are hard. Those amendment things, they're really, really hard.
They are.
When was the last time we had an amendment?
Gee, maybe it was the.
I think this is a special mission for Frenchie. We'll let him noodle on that.
Yeah, let us know, Frenchie. Yeah, so this electoral college, the way that it's set up, is sort of similar to Congress, where states are assigned electoral, what do they call electors?
Mm-hmm.
And it's similar to the way Congress is set up. So you get an elector for each of your senators, and you get an elector for each of your members of the House. So, small states that don't have a lot of people, they still get those 2 Senate representatives.
Right.
I mean, and Montana, that has more cattle than people, has those same 2 electoral votes and same 2 senators. And then, of course, I think Montana may have 1 member in the House of Representatives. I don't know, or 2. Whereas New York or California is probably a better example. They've got, I think 1/5 of the country lives in California, so, they obviously have more members in the House. They've got more electors to the Electoral College. So their influence would be outsized if it were a direct popular vote, because there's more people in California than there are in, again, I'll use Montana as an example. But, we already account for that with our election to Congress, and how states and individuals are represented in Congress with 2 senators and then a House of Representatives based on population.
Right.
So why do that again in our election of the president? Why not just have a direct popular election? And I'd like to keep this kind of simple, this discussion, because it is so complex. I feel like we could go on and on. It almost is more suited to a panel of people, since it's just you and me. But let's talk about it. And that's sort of the history of the Electoral College. And then the recent history is that, which I mentioned earlier, in 2000, Gore and Bush virtually tied, and then Gore had a larger popular vote than Bush, and there was a challenge in Florida because of some of the problems with the ballots, particularly I think in Palm Beach County. That ended up with a suit, and the Florida Supreme Court made a decision, and then that went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, their decision ended up pretty much giving Bush the election, even though Gore had more popular vote. And then in 2016, we had Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton beat Trump in a popular vote by 3 million votes.
Right.
But his Electoral College vote was a landslide, where he got 306 Electoral College versus her, I think 232.
Right.
And in 2020, Trump ran for re-election, and this time it flipped, and Biden got those same, or not, probably not the same exact votes, but the same number, 306 electoral votes, which is a landslide in the Electoral College. But he also received something like 81 million popular votes,
Right.
which is the largest that any presidential candidate has ever received. But I will qualify that with Trump received 774 million, roughly, popular votes, which is the largest number of votes that a sitting president has ever received, even though it was, 10 million or so less than Biden.
So. Yeah, and so that was one of that last election was a case where the person won both sets,
yes,
the electoral and the
and that's been the case throughout history. And I think I'm guessing that it was the law was written to show representation in these smaller places. But typically, if you did it right, you had to campaign to it forced candidates to campaign to those smaller communities, those smaller states.
Yeah.
Because, if it was just by popular vote, then candidates might ignore those smaller states.
Yeah, they might not go to those fairs and eat the corn dogs.
That's right.
All right. Well, hey, Frenchie's chiming in, Mike. Apparently, the last amendment was the 27th Amendment in 1992.
Okay.
So not too long ago. And the one before that, he says 1971. All right. So it seems like we might be due for a new amendment.
Yeah. Doug, the 26th Amendment, however, we might remember, was the amendment to the Constitution that lowered the voting age to 18. I think it was a response by, the Vietnam War and people being drafted at 18 who couldn't even vote.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. You make me go overseas and fight a war, I should be able to vote on something.
Yes. So I don't know. I tend to think we should move to a direct popular election. I think I saw that popular opinion of a popular vote is in favor of moving away from the Electoral College. Maybe this is something we need to discuss as a country going forward. I mean, I don't think we can cover it in this podcast, but it seems odd to me that we elect a president, but it's not like one person, one vote, that somebody could win, a plurality of the votes of all the voters in the country, yet lose the election because of the system of Electoral College. So this is something we might have to revisit sometime as on a podcast, but certainly as a country, country.
Mike, mark my words, I think we will reach a point where the presidential election will be held like something like American Idol.
Voting is open right now. Take a look at the details of the voting on the screen.
Where they'll have two big things that you can text message your vote.
Oh.
So make sure you pick your favorite and vote for them all night long. We will name your winner.
It's true. I think the Electoral College feels like a relic. As you were suggesting earlier, people couldn't get their information. Voters didn't have the information so instantaneously that we get now. Well, I think this is certainly a discussion that's not going away. And I don't know, but it feels like, to me, at this moment, the country would like a direct election of president. I think the Electoral College is confusing. And it's difficult to describe.
Yeah. I
just think direct election by popular vote just seems more simple and transparent.
Yeah. Well, the time will tell. We'll see how this all plays out, Mike.
Yep.
All right. So let's see. Mike, I think with that, we can roll into our film for today, which is Good Will Hunting.
Yes.
Have you seen that film?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. Yes. Well, so first, let's just start with a couple of facts. The film came out in 1997, and it was nominated for 9 Oscars.
Yeah.
9. That's a lot.
9 times.
9 times.
9 times.
Right?
That makes me wonder. Frenchie, what film has had the most Oscar nominations ever? We'll let him dig that up. I'm always curious. But Good Will Hunting, it won 2 Oscars. It won Best Original Screenplay. And can you guess the other one?
Best Supporting Actor.
Exactly. Very good guess. So yes, the supporting actor, Robin Williams.
Yes. He was good.
Yeah, he was great. And that was his only Academy Award win.
Oh.
And he had been in, he'd been in the industry for a long time.
Sure.
And,
He'd been nominated probably too.
yeah, he was nominated a lot, but this is his big win.
Fisher King, perhaps?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, but this was his big win.
Yeah.
I was rewatching the film the other day, and man, you really know a movie is almost 30 years old because Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, they both were like super thin.
And young.
Yeah, you can tell. And so some of the things about the film, as you know, it's set, a lot of it is set at MIT.
Harvard too, right?
And Harvard, yeah, MIT and Harvard. And I love that it's set in actual, universities instead of making up fictional ones. Although, the other day I rewatched that movie Real Genius with Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he is at what was modeled after Caltech.
Yeah.
In that film. Although in the movie, they don't say Caltech, they call it Pacific Tech. Okay. So, I mean, come on, just call it damn Caltech. What's the problem there? So I love how Good Will Hunting, it says, they say MIT and Harvard.
Sure.
Apparently they had some difficulty. They initially weren't going to be able to film anything at Harvard. And then John Lithgow, who's a Harvard alum, pulled some strings and got him in there.
Good for him.
So some other things, as we all know, again, the movie is almost 30 years old. So, we don't really need to tell everyone the plot and worry about spoilers. But, it is about a math genius who comes from a place that is unexpected.
Yep.
And so Matt Damon, he works as a janitor at MIT and he sees problems up on the chalkboard after hours and he solves them. And then people are super surprised the next day that problems are getting solved and they have no idea who's solving them.
Yep.
And so I was sort of curious, and it turns out those math problems, they're real. They're real math problems that he's solving. Apparently, they're not as hard as the film makes them out to be. But, most of the people who watch the movie, it's hard enough.
Sure.
Yeah. And the professor in it, he's played by his name's hard.
Stellan. Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah. Well, I just know him as the Dr. Selvig from Avengers. But he plays the professor at MIT, and I like how the screenplay references a bunch of stuff from real life. He in talking about how Matt Damon's character is this super genius, he references a real prodigy from India in 1910. Who's a fascinating case study as well. Came from nowhere, just stumbled across some math books, which spurned his interest, and was just literally able to piece together these things from just a few math books. Like he just had it inherently built into his brain to understand these things. I love the concept of the film.
Great movie, great script. I really enjoyed it. When I mentioned that we'd like to watch it, my wife said, "Oh, it's one of my favorites."
Yeah.
So
now, Mike, you being from Boston,
yes,
how do you feel the film does representing Boston and the accents and the area?
I think it did a great job.
Yes.
I think it did. I know at one time I thought Robin Williams didn't do a great job when I first saw it years ago. I thought Robin Williams, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are from Boston, so they were great. They knew how to do the accent. But Robin Williams, not so much. But after watching it recently, I thought, you know what? He was supposed to be a Harvard grad, and I think that changes. He wasn't the working class kid that he grew up as. So I think that people's accents change, depending on their
Okay.
education and their world experiences. He had been, the character grew up in South Boston, but I just thought, no, he probably did sound like that. He probably didn't have the wicked smart, Boston accent
Yeah.
from his childhood. He probably did, evolve a little bit.
All right. And so, Mike, let me ask you, like in the film, a lot of the characters like, you're from Southie. Like, is that a thing from Southie?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. In fact, it is, like the movie, it's a working class neighborhood that's right in Boston. It's very, close to the center of Boston, but and it looks exactly like it looks in the movie. I mean, I think they must have filmed that.
Yeah.
That part, the exterior shots. Yeah.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things I noted, which made me think they're doing a great job of representing the Boston area, is one of the characters has a T-shirt that says, "I hate LA."
Yes, I saw that too.
Yeah, and I've known folks from Boston, and that is a huge thing. They really hate LA.
Yeah, and that goes back to the Lakers and the Celtics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that was great. A great rivalry back in the day, which seems like it wouldn't be. Most rivalry, Pittsburgh and Cleveland and the Yankees and the Red Sox, they're sort of in close proximity. But Boston and LA, they're as far away as you can get, pretty much, and yet because they seem to end up in the finals in the NBA so many times, they were big rivals. So
yeah. Just circling back to the guy who plays the professor. I was rewatching the film, and it was interesting. I noticed a few things that I hadn't really noticed before, but there's one scene early in the film where the professor is at an outdoor alumni lunch. Some students come up to him and say, "Hey, your problem on the chalkboard got solved."
Yeah.
At this point, the professor was already being depicted as basically pretentious, cocky. But now it shifted gears in that moment where he now starts to come off as, like, in my opinion, as like a predator, because he hits on the female student. The female student comes up to him and says, the problem was solved. And he says to her, "Hey, it's a Saturday, unless you want to have a drink with me." Like, he kind of hits on her. But, she has a classic line. She says, she kind of laughs and says, "Oh, maybe later." So back to the problem. She totally deflects him. And then later in the movie, he's waiting in the hallway while Will, Matt Damon is having a session with Robin Williams. He's waiting in the hallway, and he's hitting on another female student.
Yeah.
This time at a different college, because Robin Williams is at a different college. Yeah, and some other things in the film that I love is the banter between the four group of friends. So it's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
They get to play the two main guy characters in the buddy side of it, and I love how they're all working construction, and so they pick each other up in the morning.
Yeah,
and Ben and Matt are in the front seat of the car like all the time because they're the alpha males, right?
Yes.
And then their two buddies are like stuck in the back seat, and they're back there like complaining. I love the scene where they stop and pick up some food.
Yeah.
And the one kid in the back's like, "Hey, give me my sandwich." And Ben Affleck's like, "No, I'm going to put your sandwich on layaway."
Yeah.
Puts it up on the dashboard. He finally gets his sandwich, right? And then they're driving down the street, and Matt Damon's like, "Hey, there's that kid I hate. Pull over." And they go to get in the fight, right? The big fight scene.
Yeah.
And the kid in the back says, "Guys, why do we got to fight now? I just got my snacks."
Yeah.
That's nice now.
So I love those scenes with the guys. Some other pieces of the film that I love. So Matt Damon, he's a troubled youth, right? Troubled childhood.
Yes. Yeah.
But a genius, and he's getting the help from Robin Williams, who's a therapist, to work through these things. And before he meets Robin Williams, the professor puts him in touch with some other therapists. So he goes through like 4 other therapists who just after one meeting refuse to continue.
Yeah.
And did you notice one of those therapists is George Plimpton?
Yes.
And George Plimpton was really known back in the day for his sports writing, I believe, and writing in general.
Yes.
But he's known as a writer, and he actually went to Harvard.
Yeah.
But I love that scene where Matt Damon's interacting with him, and he's, he plays kind of a stuffy,
Yes.
upper crust therapist, and he's like, no, listen here, I want us to agree that there'll be no more shenanigans, ballyhoo,
Tomfoolery.
no more tomfoolery.
No more shenanigans, no more tomfoolery, no more ballyhoo.
I love that scene. Another interesting thing is, Minnie Driver in the film, she's the love interest with Matt Damon. And then towards the end of the film and after the film, they dated briefly.
Mm-hmm.
So that always adds a little extra reality to the scenes in the movie. And, Matt Damon's character, being a genius, sort of has a photographic memory. And I love the scene in the film where Minnie Driver is trying to trip him up and get him to answer truthfully questions. Yeah. And she says, tell me about your family. And he's like, oh, I got 12 brothers,
Yeah.
She's like, oh, really? What are their names? And I love he rattles off Ricky, Ticky, Mikey, Billy, Johnny, Paulie. He's just rattling names up. And she goes, okay, great. Now tell me those names again. And he just perfectly from memory rattles them off again.
Mikey, Ricky, Danny, Terry, Mikey, Davey, Timmy, Tommy, Joey, Robbie, Johnny, and Brian.
And she's like, oh. Okay. I loved Ben Affleck in the film. I thought he did a great job, playing the buddy. I love the scene where after the halfway part of the film, Matt Damon starts to get job offers from these big companies. But he's not at a mental point where he's willing to even entertain them or interview them, but they're pressuring him to come in for job interviews. So he sends his buddy, Ben Affleck, who's just a construction worker, sends him into these interviews.
Yeah.
And Affleck makes the most of it. He goes into these interviews and he says, all right, boys, before I start to talk to you, I'm going to need a retainer.
Nobody in this town works without a retainer, guys.
And they're looking at each other like, what? And he goes, come on, retainer. And they're saying, well, I don't know if we, and he rubs his fingers together and he sits back in his chair and he says, retainer. And he gets $200, Mike.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a lesson for a lot of us in our next job interview. Just try it. Just keep saying retainer and you might get $200. All right. So let's talk about Robin Williams.
Yeah.
So, those are just some tremendous scenes with him and Matt Damon.
Oh, yeah.
So Robin Williams, at this point in his life, Mike, he's no stranger to, in his own personal life, to troubles, right?
Yeah. Yep.
He's battled his own demons. Sure. And so in these scenes, I'm sure he pulls on that experience and life experience because they just really are powerful and well done.
Yep.
And, specifically the bench scene where they're sitting out and which is shot in Boston Common. Is it Boston Common or Commons?
You're right. Boston Common. They're in the public garden. They call it public gardens.
That's right. And in fact, that bench they're sitting at, I think it later got dedicated to Robin Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You can sit there if you're ever in the area. I like that scene because, first of all, a big part of it is a no-cut scene. They just say action and he does his long, monologue with no cuts. That's always an impressive thing to see in film.
Yeah.
I myself, Mike, have some personal Robin Williams stories because I live in the San Francisco Bay Area where he lived for many years. Yeah. I have a good friend of mine who's a big jogger. He loves jogging around the area. He was going for a run down in what we call the Marina Green. And he said that and it was a beautiful day and he's jogging down, along the beach. And he said every time someone would be passing him, so he'd be running in one lane and people would be running at him and passing him. They would all look at him and have a big smile on their face. And my friend was thinking, oh, I must really look good today. and girls would be totally smiling at him. And he's just thinking, oh man, I am on my game. Right. And then he stopped to take a break and who should pass him, who was right behind him the whole time? Robin Williams.
Wow.
All these people were smiling at Robin Williams and my friend totally thought it was him. let's just note that Ben Affleck, he works construction with Matt Damon, and frequently he's telling Matt Damon, dude, you got to get out of here. You've got, you've got such brain power and such opportunity. You can't just be doing construction with me. One of the things I look forward to every single, workday when I go to pick you up is a part of me hopes that you're not there anymore, that you've moved on. And it's a touching scene. And then in the end of the film, that's exactly what happens. Ben Affleck pulls up and he looks in there and he gets a big smile on his face once he realized that Matt Damon's gone.
Yes.
And Casey in the back seat jumps out with a huge grin on his face. He's so happy because now he's moved up to the front seat.
Yeah.
He's moving on up. He's moving on up, Mike.
Yep.
But just from start to finish, the film is, it really deserved the awards and nominations that it got. Yeah. And
it is a classic. Great movie.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Frenchie is now replying, Mike, as to what film has had the most nominations. Turns out it was the 1997 Titanic movie.
Interesting.
Yeah, it had 14 nominations.
Yeah, probably a lot of special effects.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to be beaten anytime soon. 14 nominations.
I know. Yeah.
King of the world, Mike. I think that is our summary of the film. I think we've done it some justice here.
Yeah.
All right. For all of us here at Politics and a Movie, thank you for listening. And you can check out our website at politicsandamovie.com. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Doug.
And thank you, Frenchie. Au revoir, everybody.
How do you like them apples?